Welcome back to Curious Christianity. I'm Adam, and I want to revisit the subject of animal death a little bit. A little bit of a new idea has just come up that I guess I just hadn't really thought as much about. And it's also one that I very much wonder, have the young earth creationists thought as much about it? Now, of course, I know some certainly have. But let's think for a moment. What are the theological implications of having no animal death whatsoever prior to the fall of Adam and Eve? Now, I know the main one that's always harped on is the idea of like, well, we can't have death before the fall because that means that God didn't create something very good and all those sorts of things. Yes, I got you. But I want to ask this. Is sin responsible for the incredible ecosystem, the creation of animals, how they work, how they function on Earth today? Now, this has more theological implications than I originally thought, because this idea would be, one, does sin create something beautiful? Are there any results where we have sin, and then sin is what turns something into something beautiful? Now, I just want to cut to the cross really quickly, because it's like, well, sin allows this beautiful picture of the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, the punishment of sin and human sacrifice and all of that. It's like, okay. Yeah. That's not sin that's doing that, but it's the righteousness, the goodness of God, all those things. That's what's bringing about the beauty, not the sin itself. Now, here's a couple questions. Let's think about animals for a minute and all of nature. And for those that are animal lovers, who are really, really into earth science, who are into how animals are created and stuff, think about the chameleon. Think about monarch butterflies. Think about all of these predators and animals who have defense mechanisms against predators, animals who have special unique things about them for killing other animals, snakes that have poison and venom, other lizards that have poison and venom, all sorts of things inside of animals that seem uniquely designed to kill another animal. Like, we're not just talking about teeth, but we're talking about glands and the changing of one's skin to protect oneself, defense mechanisms. Some animals can lose their tail. Some of them can lose, body parts. They can do all sorts of things to protect themselves from other predators. Is it the case that God created those things? Or are all of those facets, all of the tremendous parts of the animal kingdom that way because of sin? In other words, sin turned them into that. So there's a couple alternatives you can go. One, you can say is like, well, after Adam and Eve sinned, God dramatically changed everything. So the most extreme version is God dramatically changed the laws of physics, the ecosystem, all of these things. Now, I certainly think that it's a much larger stretch if you want to go with the laws of physics, second law of thermodynamics, all of those, because what you have to say, right, is that God, after sin, did about the second largest miracle right next to creation. The laws of physics affect the entire universe. Massive, massive. But now let's just focus in on the ecosystem. Now we are also saying, okay, so after sin, God effectively changed all animals, or a lot of animals. And I don't just mean like, oh, he changed the way they behave to one another. Like, no, like animals grew different parts, or they did other things, or I don't know, or he just completely changed like how they functioned, why they did it. It seems to me like this would be really peculiar. Or are you just saying it's like, well, no, God didn't do that? Because, are you saying like, well, God did all of his early acts of creation, and then shortly after, right after sin, God did a second incredibly miraculous massive act of creation in restructuring, redoing all of animal kind. Or maybe you just want to propose the idea that it's like, well, God built all of those structures in there knowing man would sin, but he didn't activate them till afterwards. Again, being a massive change in the entire animal kingdom. And then what's furthermore is actually this idea, again, this plays into a separate deceiver God argument. In other words, the idea that it's like, well, if someone's observing animals and they're observing all of these attributes of animals, all of these body parts, functions, potential things for harming animals, except for they're not designed for that. Either this is deceptive in the sense that it's like, well, animals were created with all of those things, but they weren't designed to kill animals. They weren't designed to kill animals, or they were. So they are designed, or they aren't, or they were designed with this idea to kill animals, but only once man sinned. Like, there are a lot of things to talk about, and I imagine you could have a different amount of views on this thing in and of itself. And I don't exactly know how somebody else would respond to all of these notions. I guess I'm curious to hear more thoughts. But if you have sin is the cause and what's responsible for animals behaving this way, for animals growing new glands to kill other animals, for animals having defense mechanisms, it doesn't seem theologically right or correct to say that something beautiful, because to me it seems very much like our ecosystem. When you think of the incredible design of animals, how they are uniquely fashioned and made to protect themselves or to do all these things, that beautiful system came out of something evil. Essentially, the fall of man is what caused this incredibly beautiful system. That seems wrong, to put it bluntly, and I would love to hear some further comments and discussion. So if you have further thoughts on this discussion, please put them in the comments below. And I would love to see the dialogue on this subject carried out a little further.